All right, folks, it's time for world politics. We're going to see what folks got on their mind on the political front and all along those lines, because a number of things are taking place as we examine what's happening in the world and what we are thinking about a number of these things, including the fact that we've got a number of people that are getting endorsements and getting all kinds of benefits from the political front and all along those lines. So definitely just finished watching a interview with Jasmine Crockett on one of the YouTube channels, and that was an interesting interview where she said that she was not making any friends with the MAGA crowd, and we all know that because of the call to have like a fight among each other with Nancy Mace and also her dealings with Marjorie Taylor Greene. So she said that she has had some people that have apologized to her from the Republican front and everything like that. And she even said that Trump has got basically what amounts to a cult and all along those lines. But it was definitely interesting to see what's going on in that space. And apparently earlier today, Caroline Leavitt, the youngest White House press secretary, made her debut in the briefing room and all along those lines. So definitely it'll be interesting to see what's going on in that space, as well as Trump's federal funding freeze, which will apparently disrupt a vast array of programs. Illinois is already shutting out of Medicaid and all along those lines. So like I said, a lot's going on in the political front and all in that space. And by the way, atomic scientists have adjusted the doomsday clock closer than ever to midnight. So apparently we're getting closer. Looks like on one of the clocks that I'm seeing, it says it's 89 seconds to midnight. So I guess the doomsday clock is saying that we're getting closer and closer to doomsday, and they have set the clock further and further up. And all of this is because of climate change and the threats of climate change, as well as the threats of nuclear war and all along those lines. I'm gonna bring in one of my favorite persons that's always trying to find ways that we can come up with peaceful solutions in the world and everything like that. That my good friend Jim Eade, and seeing if he ever pays attention to the doomsday clock. I remember that there used to be, I want to say it was when Reagan was in office, a clock that you could buy that would have the amount of days left, and I think they had down to the minutes of the Reagan administration. There might have been one of those for Bush as well, and there have been a number of other ones. I'm thinking that there might be somebody that's going to put out one of those Trump kind of like clocks or watches that will let us know how much longer we have, since I think we're in day 8 and we've got a 4-year span. So I'm thinking somebody has already put out that clock and is probably putting it out on Amazon or Temu or one of the other outlets that is out there. But did you ever pay attention to those kind of like the doomsday clock that I guess predicts when the whole world will end and we'll have calamity, or whether you even bought one of those Reagan watches? I think it was under Reagan. It might have been under one of the Bushes as well. It was definitely under a Republican president and everything. And did you ever buy one of those for yourself?
Never, Mark. And I the only countdown I ever paid attention to was New Year's Eve. And, I don't know that they can have any credibility in terms of predicting the time and place of a catastrophe. These things usually, if we could predict them, we can prevent them. And most of the time, we can't get a consensus that there's even a problem, let alone a catastrophe awaiting us. But that clearly has been the global consensus among scientists for quite some time. But when will the rest of the world and the general public believe what the science has been telling us? And only then can we talk about, are we going to try to tackle it in meaningful ways? And then that will adjust the clock. Our response can definitely delay, if not prevent, an overall global climate catastrophe. But there will still be pain and suffering, I think, no matter what we do. And how we minimize that pain and suffering is really incumbent upon us in this generation of world leaders.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense and everything. You got Sasha joining us as well as Rick Rosner. I did see that Bernie Sanders has blasted Trump for the federal loans and grant freezes. Apparently, and I know, Sasha, you've talked about what we've done since we have put Trump into office, but Bernie Sanders is saying that he is not a king. And I know that there are some people that think that he is king, including some of the MAGA wing and everything. And the Trump administration denies it is pausing all federal grants after the sweeping memo that was out there, but they are saying that some state Medicaid payments are inaccessible, and there's this notion of a broader freeze and everything like that. So even nonprofits in New York are told their contracts have been paused and everything. So I'm thinking that there's going to be a lot of things in terms of freezes, and maybe we do have an oligarch, as Jatopia said on the show, or a kingdom that is going on. I thought that that's what we, well, not we, but those from Europe, I thought that's what they left England from, was they were trying to not have a monarchy, but maybe we put the monarchy back in charge and everything. So what is your thoughts around this? And also we're going to get to the New Jersey drones as well, but what's your thoughts on this notion that Bernie Sanders is trying to push back and saying that Trump is not king? Sasha.
You want me?
Yeah.
It's not just opinion of Bernie Sanders. It's just facts. If you look at the majority which Trump won in the election, it's 1.5% of total votes. Doesn't sound to me like he has overwhelming majority and he has a mandate to do anything what he wants. Although the the sum of different factors brought him to presidency. Number one man who brought him to presidency obviously is Merrick Garland, who started to act as he should have done a year, maybe year and a half later than he should have done. So by the time of the election, if everything would work out as it should have been, he would be in jail rather than the king or whatever else he think he is. Number two, a lot of people, especially Democrat-leaning people, because they thought that everything is all right, economy is doing well, let's not bother even to vote because everything is good. And they refused, didn't make it to a voting booth, and that helped tremendously Trump as well. So there's a number of factors. So there, another one is that Joe Biden, he should have, instead of getting out of the race, he should have resigned as a president long time ago, not when he did. And he didn't even resign. He was very selfish that, okay, if Kamala Harris will win, then it's okay. We are in power. And if she will lose, it's not me. She would lose, which exactly what's happened. She would lose election, and I'm one of the greatest presidents of all time. And so he acted very selfishly. If he would do it at least 2 months before he did it finally, he would resign and Kamala would become a president, and she would have enough time to prepare, and nobody would ask her, who is Kamala Harris? We don't know who she is, and all that stuff. All that would be gone. So Trump would never become a president. But however, now he apparently was very well prepared for a presidency, and he put all the people were ready to assume their positions, and all that started almost instantly after inauguration. And I think he will make a lot of people in his domestic policies. There will be a lot of unhappy people. There will be a lot of people who will lose jobs. And in international politics, it's now a movement headed, by the way, believe it or not, Canada, to unite all countries in the free world again, and not only free world, actually all world, to fight back against Trump tariffs policy. And there is a movement to impose incredible tariffs, maybe even up to 50% on all American goods sold in all over the world. And I would be very anxious to see what Trump will do in this situation.
It'll be interesting to see what's going on in there. By the way, I just saw that Google Maps is saying that U.S. users will see Trump's new name for Gulf of Mexico. So if you're using Google Maps, I guess you're going to see the Gulf of America on those maps. And apparently, no, Cuba and Mexico are not all that pleased by it. And even there is some notion of other things that might be changing as well. But I guess that particular map will say the Gulf of America instead of the Gulf of Mexico, which it had been saying for a while. Hey, Rick, just along those same lines, I'd love to hear your thoughts around this. There is this notion, and I think it's some of the MAGA supporters that are saying that they would like to see Trump's face on Mount Rushmore. So what is your take on this? And have you been hearing about this? Because I guess there is a push, and he's only now in his second term, in the early parts of his second term, to have his face on Mount Rushmore. So what is your...
I don't know who controls that. And I don't know if there's even enough stone available. I assume there is. But like, I think isn't Mount Rushmore South Dakota, which is Kristi Noem's territory, though she's no longer governor. She's now head of Homeland Security. Yes. I suppose it's possible, but doing it would maybe take longer than Trump will be president. It takes years. They do it with dynamite. They drill holes, they blast away the rock. It takes a long time. So I don't know. But if we're going to do wishful thinking, here's what should have happened in retrospect. 2016, Biden didn't run for president because he was sad because his son, Beau Biden, had just died. In 2016, it should have been Biden for president and Hillary for VP, which would have minimized the damage that Hillary did because she's just VP, with her emails and all that, the attacks on Hillary. And then they would have won 2016 against Trump. And then maybe they run again in 2020. And then maybe at some point, frickin' Biden resigns and lets Hillary be president the same way he should have resigned, the way Sasha said, and let Harris be president. But that's frickin', short of having a time machine, we can't do any of that.
Yeah, we don't have a time machine. I don't know that there was any that had been invented or along those lines. But what is your around that, Jim, and everything along those lines? So are you ready to have a Mount Rushmore with Trump on it? And also your thoughts around this change in the Gulf of Mexico? Because I guess Google is now saying that if you are going on Google Maps or you're going on a cruise and you get to Google Maps, it will say Gulf of America instead. So what is your thoughts on this?
Well, I think, if we're trying to minimize government inefficiency, those are two blatant examples of how to be wasteful. There's absolutely no sense in using any resources to put a stone version of Trump's head visibly displayed. The renaming is for symbolic purposes only. And with Google, it's a touch of a screen and then its update is permeated. But for things like maps and websites all over the place, it's a lot of unnecessary work for no apparent reason. So I think we're off to a bad start in terms of government efficiency. And I do think that, it's going to be very interesting, the effect of, Trump's freezing government programs. That will make a lot of people unhappy, no question about it. And the tariffs, good for Canada, good for everybody pushing back on it. Tariffs are only going to cost the American consumer. They're not going to be the mighty weapon that he thinks that they are. He has a fundamental misunderstanding of what they're for. What they're for is for if a country is lowballing their price to infiltrate a market in America, for example, you slap a tariff on them to bring them back up to market prices. That's not what Trump is talking about doing. He's talking about being punitive in a way a 5-year-old might be punitive. That will engender higher costs for the American consumer and no benefit for them at all.
So I just looked it up.
Mhm.
In 2023, Google made more than $300 billion in revenue, with half of that coming from the United States. So Google has to change it to Gulf of America, because Google does not want to jeopardize $150 billion in U.S. revenue just because of a word on a map. And that's why all these big companies gave $1 million each to Trump's inaugural.
And Zuckerberg is sucking up. Yes, of course.
Oh, you mean Zuckerberg?
They're all doing that and everything. Hey, just a real quick question, and this is for you now that you're in Spain and everything, because one of the things that they campaigned on, and there was a recent interview, and apparently J.D. Vance did say that the prices will eventually come down, even though he didn't have a plan for how they were going to come down and everything like that. But at what point do those of you that study the market think that we will see prices coming down? Because right now, because of the tariff threats, it looks like prices are actually going up if you want to buy bread or eggs or a number of other things that are out there that you might need. Even a can of soup probably costs more than it did a while back. So how are the prices going in Canada and in Spain, and when will we actually see price drops? Because that's what they campaigned on. That was the main thing that people said they wanted to see, but right now they're not seeing it. Now, given it's only 8 days in, but
Actually, some prices came down, and one of them is a price for shares of Nvidia. Down substantially, and now this fabulous buy. You see, it's easier to bring down the shares of Nvidia than the price of eggs. It's a different story. Now, speaking about tariffs, I don't know if people realize exactly what it means, because all economy today is very competitive. And let's see, I'm sure all of you heard about Chinese electric car with the name BYD. They're considered the best electric cars in the world by far. And let's see, cost of average car bid is $30,000. So all over the world, except United States, where bid is forbidden to be brought in because of 100% tariffs. Okay, so now if in US you want to have a bid, you have to pay not $30,000 but $60,000. So obviously nobody is buying that. So that allows somebody like Elon Musk to have his Tesla being sold for $40,000, $50,000, no problem, because bid is not available at that range in the United States. So what's happened is that the competitors, competing companies all over the world, using bid for $30,000. But America, which produce competing products, they have to bring their Teslas or some other, maybe GM, some cars, which cost $40,000, maybe $50,000, instead of $30,000, which could have been, and have a better car, by the way, too. So this is a serious handicap for American company, whether it's Amazon, whether it's any other substantial company. They are all in handicap to compare to their competitors around the world. That's what means tariffs.
yeah.
Oh, just to inform you, in Spain, the price of food is very inexpensive. Figure you're going to spend 30% less on food in Spain. Part of the reason why is they produce a lot of food here. I mean, it's kind of supply demand. I believe what will happen in the States, though, because Trump's going to allow baby drill, you'll start seeing oil prices go down. But unless you're going to reinvigorate your agricultural industry, and I don't see any plans to do it, you're not going to see food prices drop. And I don't think you're going to see real estate prices drop because they printed out too much money. So all the promises of inflation going down, all I can say is forget it. But the most hilarious thing that's coming out of this administration is these executive orders. I mean, some of them are just blatantly unconstitutional. Some of them are blatantly illegal. Some of them are going to have so much problems in court. But here's the good news. Because he's issuing so many horrible executive orders, it's going to keep lawyers busy like myself, and they're going to make a ton of money either attacking or defending it in court. So the legal profession is going to do quite well off of the Donald because he's going to create a lot of litigation.
Well, speaking of litigation and everything like that, and I know we talk about it sometimes on this network, but apparently a lot of people are not satisfied, because I know it's a big thing that you talk about, Nick, and everything with education in our system. So definitely it looks like nearly 2/3 of parents are considering switching their children to a different school last year, but less than half of them actually followed through. So this is a new national survey that was put out by the National School Choice Awareness Foundation, but definitely it sounds like they have a number of folks that are not satisfied with the schools that they're in, so they want to go to another school. And of those who did transfer their kids, 28% chose a traditional public school, 31% selected a public charter or magnet school, and nearly 14% chose a private or religious school, and 27% opted for online schooling, homeschooling, or a micro school. So I guess a lot of folks are trying to teach their own kids and everything like that. What is your take on what's going on with our education system? Because it looks like a lot of folks are not pleased with the education system. And if I remember correctly, that's part of the reason you and Kim founded this network, because you were thinking that there were a number of things that should be taught that weren't taught, including fiscal literacy. But what's your take on this notion? Because it sounds like it's across the board, because even military families, younger parents, and Black parents were among the most likely to consider new schools for the children last year. So about a lot of folks that folks might not be thinking are ready to get out of the school system are trying to get out as well. But what's your take on that? And am I correct in thinking that that's part of the reason that you founded the network that we're in here and everything?
Yeah. You know, Mark, I think the best example you can look at, and I'm going to see if I can get up on the screen, is the PISA scores, because the PISA scores actually show the countries and how well they perform in education. The number one score, by the way, ELO people love it. You can make it like a chess rating. Singapore was 1679. Okay. China was 1605, Japan 1599. You go to Australia 1492. I have to keep going down further. United Kingdom 1483. United States not so bad, 1468. Now they didn't even crack the top 10 in education in 2022 in the overall scores. In the math scores, we were like 465. Can you imagine a rating of 465? Mm-hmm. And then in science, US was 499, and then reading 504, overall 1485, compared to Singapore, which has the highest rating, 1679. So there are metrics that are done internationally by the OECD about the US educational system, and we're not even in the top 10.
Hey, Nick, along those same lines and everything, and I'm sure Rick may have some thoughts as well as Jim, but apparently Representative Rich McCormick, who is a Republican congressman and everything, has put out this notion that as they're talking about freezing federal aid for school lunch programs, that the kids ought to be out there working instead of relying on free meals. So I guess he's put out this notion that they ought to work for their lunch and everything along those lines. So he said that he even put out this notion: before I was even 13 years old, I was picking berries in the field before child labor laws that precluded that. I was a paper boy when I was in high school. I worked my entire way through. You're telling me that kids who stay at home instead of going to work at Burger King, McDonald's during the summer should stay at home and get their free lunch instead of going to work? I think we need to have a top-down review. So what is your thoughts? Because I do know a number of people.
Here's my thoughts. I'll make it perfectly clear. Why aren't these jerks going after the billionaires and the millionaires that have exploded in terms of amounts of money they have because they don't pay taxes? They don't pay Social Security and Medicare taxes because they get a free pass. Let's put that first on the table, and we'll talk about starving kids to death. But until they discuss that, Mark, I don't want to hear about, hey, the kids need to work in the fields. Why? Was this a congressman who said this?
Yeah, and I'm sure he had to walk the school uphill both ways.
Oh, I don't want to hear his.
Yeah, he had to walk up to most school. Hey, Sasha, I got a question for you. We kind of alluded to it earlier and everything, and I do know that the Canadian Ontario Premier threatened to shut off the power to America because of these tariffs. I did not realize, because I'm not gonna lie, I will sometimes have a drink as well. I think I got a bottle of bourbon laying around here somewhere and everything. But I didn't realize that the Ontario Premier had threatened to ban U.S. liquor in stores. So are you worried about this? Because it seems like some of these liquors that are coming from the U.S., like Jack Daniels, might not be in Canada, because if the tariffs go through, he's going to ban those in the whole notion of what can come into the Canadian store. So I know that you're a drinker and others on this panel are drinking. So I just mentioned that I will have a cold one every once in a while. So what is your thoughts around this? And are there any American liquors that you might miss if this ban was to go through?
No, I'm not missing American drinks. I even don't remember when I purchased or drank any American drink at all, because there's plenty of, first of all, Canadian whiskeys, really, really good, and Scotch, of course, tequila. Finally, there are enough excellent drinks here. Now, speaking about Premier of Ontario, he is actually called election, although he has really strong mandate, but he needs overwhelming mandate to fight American tariffs or a threat of the tariffs. I don't think that America will do a lot. Trump, as usual, he talks a lot, but when it comes time to implement, for example, this tariffs against Canada, he said at once that it will be implemented the same day as inauguration. Then he changed it to February 1st. And February 1st is coming, and very quickly. I don't see whether he will do it or not. I have a strong feel that he's not going to do it. Now, speaking about international affairs, a lot of people believe that Trump did brilliant action against Colombia, and Colombia had to yield to his demands or so on. That's not so at all, because what he did, he sent 2 military planes filled with Colombians, and Colombia refused to allow landing of military planes from US. It was completely rejected. So they have to land in somewhere Guatemala, not too far from Colombia. And there they started to negotiate. And essentially what was the end of the story, that Colombia sent its own plane to Guatemala, picked up all these people, Colombians, and brought them to Colombia. So it ended same as it started. No military US planes were allowed to land in Colombia. That was the beginning, and that was the end. Full stop, period.
Yeah, along those same lines. Hey, and this is for Jim and everything real quickly, because like I said, before I came on the news, I was watching a interview on one of the other YouTube channels with Jasmine Crockett, and she brought up this fact, and I'd love to hear your thoughts around this. The ICE raids right now are dealing with a lot of brown folks and people that are brown or darker complexion and everything. But she mentioned that she had a friend of hers. She didn't even realize that the friend was married to an immigrant, but the person actually apparently called and was in a panic because she was married. She was a typical European American in the sense of being second or third or fourth generation, everything. But apparently her husband was either from Switzerland or Sweden, but one of the S countries that is Scandinavian and everything like that. But she was apparently in panic, but she was afraid that her husband was going to be deported. But the ones I'm seeing right now are not people that look like her husband and everything like that. But I just wondering your thoughts around this, and will we see people that are of a different nationality getting caught up in these immigration raids as well? Because like I said, apparently she called Jasmine Crockett because she was her representative there in Dallas and was panicking because it was a friend of hers. And she was like, and as Jasmine said, I didn't even realize that he was not from this country, but apparently he was not from this country.
All right. I watched Jon Stewart last night, and he said we should keep our powder dry and not call everything Trump does fascism. We should maybe save it for some of the bigger moves later. And he said, we voted for all this. The Republicans control the presidency, the House, and the Senate. So, and nothing Trump has done is beyond what we voted for him to do at this point. He was making fun of us as much as he was making fun of Trump. Which, I kind of agree with, that we were, enough Americans fell for this stuff. Now, there's a famous saying from Sinclair Lewis. when fascism comes to America, it will be wrapped in a flag and carrying a cross. And today was the first day of, I guess, Trump's new press secretary, this
Yes.
pretty young blonde woman, and she was wearing a cross about yay big. It was big, thick cross. It was, and it pissed me off because the what Trump is doing, especially with undocumented people, is not super Christian. All right, that's point one. Point two is my wife and I are going back to Costco today because I'm going to get fitted with a hearing aid. My wife is tired of. She thinks if I can hear better, I'll listen to her better. I'm not sure if that's going to work. But while we're there, we're going to buy a bunch more coffee because, we are still hassling with Colombia. And I don't know, the coffee futures went up another % today, I think. So, we might as well buy some more pods before they get hit.
Yeah. Jim?
Well, I do think we're getting exactly what we deserve. None of the things I'm thinking of it as a theater going experience for me, and I'm going to eat popcorn and watch for 4 years because there's no sense getting upset. I never thought that the American people would vote for someone who had been impeached twice, 34 felony convictions. This is beyond what I thought was not improbable, almost impossible for me to believe, but it happened. So now, of course, he's going to do those things. And of course, he's pushing, like, the Constitution really doesn't matter to someone like Donald Trump. And there will be pushback from people that think that the Constitution does matter. And how those get resolved will be on a case-by-case basis. And as Nick pointed out, the lawyers will be happy and everybody else will be frustrated. And what he gets away with, he's going to get away with, and there won't be anything to stop him. So it's very uncomfortable for me, but I also don't think it's important to say everything that he does is bad, or everything he's doing is criminal, or everything that he's doing is comes from a childlike fit of rage. In many cases, that's exactly what it is, but it doesn't serve the average citizen to play that game. It's try to do the best you can as an American citizen, living the American values as you understand them in your daily life, and let Trump's temper tantrums play out on the national scale, international scale, and we'll suffer whatever consequences there are from them, including the tariffs that he levies will hit the American consumer in the pocketbook. There's no question in my mind. His economic plans make no sense to me. I don't think they're well thought out. I keep hoping that there will be reasonable people talking him out of his some of the things that he thinks are genius ideas. We'll see. Well, I'm just going to watch and see.
I think
you know what? I'll be thinking of you guys where I'm sitting overlooking the Mediterranean on my penthouse in Badalona, which is right next to Barcelona, on the beach. I'll be really thinking about you guys while I'm watching the sunsets and the sunrises on the beachfront of the Mediterranean in Spain.
That's going to happen here too, Nick.
What?
That's going to happen here too, sunsets and sunset. And I advise
I understand that in California they get these fires and stuff. We get these fiery sunrises and sunsets all over the Mediterranean, and we eat some really good food here in Spain. The Mediterranean diet, our average life expectancy is 84, as opposed to, I think, in your country it's like 77. And we have a health system that works. So, I can see the advantages of being in America today, and you get to listen to Trump all the time. And we don't hardly hear him over here, because Spain really isn't interested in that stuff. They're interested in living good. And as they say, capitalism here is an economic system. In your country, it's a religion. But go on.
So the first time Trump was president, I was really upset because I'd been trained to be upset because for the previous 12 years, I'd been writing jokes for a late night show.
Right.
And the deal is, as a comedian, comedy writer, you have to get worked up about stuff that just bugs other people just a little bit. You put a comedy writer on a plane, Jerry Seinfeld on a plane, and he gets, what's up with this? What's up with, and you have to be in a tizzy all the time. And so I'd been trained to be in a tizzy, and Trump hit, and I just got irritable bowel syndrome, and I just pooped all the time because I was freaking out.
I love your shirt, Rick. I have OCD. I have OCD.
Yeah,
I have OCD.
yeah, somebody from my old job gave it to me. But this time around, I notice I've been sleeping a lot, which is better than pooping. I don't know if I'm sleeping because I'm sad or because it's just nice to sleep, or because our cable bill has been running $300 a month, which is just ridiculous. So
Okay, our cable bill here in Spain is atrocious. I think I'm spending $11 a month.
Gosh.
I'm just
Rub
telling
it in,
you.
Nick. Not everyone can afford to run away to a nicer
All
place.
right.
When I go and eat out at these really fancy 5-star Michelin star restaurants, sometimes they get a bill as high as $27.
All right. But so anyway, so we had to cancel some of our cable services, which makes it harder for us to go. I used to go, CNN, MSNBC, Fox. I just used to roll through them and get more and more worked up. But now we lost some of our services. It's much harder to roll the news.
Hey, Rick, speaking of rolling news and everything, you're going to love this one and everything because I just saw this. And I love to hear folks' thoughts around this. You just mentioned earlier the new press secretary, but apparently she addressed the high cost of eggs while speaking to reporters earlier today. And she actually, which we expected, blamed the Biden administration. She said that the Biden administration contributed to the supply shortage by directing the killing of over 100 million chickens. So I don't know that there was this order that Biden had, but apparently that's what Levitt said, is that there was some order to kill.
Yeah, you know why those chickens were killed? Because they had bird flu. I'm not sure you can. I think it's probably illegal to sell diseased chickens.
I would think that would be a problem. Yeah, you don't want to sell that.
I know I wouldn't want any from the COVID facility over in Wuhan. So, right. So,
just remember what you're listening to from this organization up here is suspect to begin with. So when it comes out of that place called Washington, D.C., there's a good chance it comes from a politician. And there's a great chance that whatever they're saying is not true. So I think they did a truth meter.
But you never said that when you lived here, Nick.
Well, that's because I'm free now, Jim. Okay, that they can't. They
now you have a completely different perspective on.
I'm living in Europe now, baby.
He's living in Europe. He got a different perspective.
As my doctors say, the dream life on the Mediterranean Sea, as opposed to my nightmare.
You
of the dream life.
You don't realize you were deported by Trump.
My nightmare of living in the,
yeah, we know you got deported. Speaking of the dream life and all along those lines, I love to hear people's thoughts because apparently, and I know it's a minor percentage. I think Rick gave us the percentage one time, but apparently starting, I guess now, there can be, and I don't know how you're going to prove that they are or aren't unless you're going to do some sort of test and everything, but I guess we can't have trans soldiers now and everything. So I remember you brought this up, Rick, that they don't make up that big of a population. Apparently an executive order that we now aren't going to allow trans soldiers.
So, but so 15,000 soldiers out of more than 2 million are trans. I'm hoping that a lot of them figure out how to get around the regulations where it may be that you keep serving, and if you want to be called a woman, if you want to be called, maybe you're a woman who transformed into. If you've ever seen a trans soldier who was a woman who turned into a man, they are freaking dangerous looking. They're doing a ton of testosterone. They will soldier the hell out of you. So I don't know how you get around it. Like maybe. I buy some of my drugs from India, and some of these places will sell you drugs just via the gray market, including trans drugs. So maybe you don't get your drug. I'm hoping they come up with workarounds where they don't go to the government, the army for their testosterone. They get it from someplace else. They keep serving. They look like dudes, but because they were born women, then they let, the Army call them ma'am, but they're still badass and they still get to serve.
Okay, I actually had a
So,
transfer.
you know what?
to
I had the rude awakening this weekend. So please, you guys, heed this warning. Make sure you read your tips, especially if they're automated tips for a group. I wasn't even with the group, but I read what was there, and I don't think anybody is. But for some automated tipping, it's 30% now, automatic. 30.
Good, bad, or
I read everything when I'm like super
Oh,
distracted.
you guys have tipping in the United States. They don't do that in Spain.
I know they
I
don't do it
remember
in
that
Albania,
$27 bill.
or they don't
There would
do
be a
it in
tip on that
Bali.
$27 bill. I'm sorry, because they don't tip in Spain.
Franco is still
But
dead.
I do want to tell you, I actually had a trans person who used to work for my company when I was in Bellingham, Washington, that we hired an actuary. The thing is, I didn't know the person was trans, except Michael happened to be a little shorter than most people. That was about it. But the thing is, honestly, I had no idea. He worked there for several years before somebody came up to me, Michael's trans. I go, no, I didn't know that.
Well, and
He was a good actuary.
hear me out on why I think, and politically why tipping is going to be going up, is we don't have to pay taxes on it. So that is becoming our full income. Restaurants are, the owner's going to go, hey, I'll take my share. No tax on dibs.
but this executive order that bans trans may be another executive order that's illegal, because you're not supposed to discriminate based on
Yeah, but we got rid of
sex,
DEI.
race, and orientation.
We got rid of DEI, right, Nick?
Yeah,
The thing is, he has a lot of
those things.
I think are questioned by the
Nick,
court.
I got a quick question for you.
Yet. So give this time. My prediction on Pod TV is that a lot of these executive orders are getting struck down by the courts. Watch.
Yeah, but I think you're right. But Nick, I got a quick question for you and everything, and it's actually for everybody. And it involves my fine town here in Durham and everything along those lines. But there was an incident. There was a game. Duke's been doing very well in basketball, but apparently there was a person that got sick and everything. And now ESPN is getting some criticism because they decided to carry a lot of what was going on in that incident and all along those lines. So how much should we actually be carrying and covering what's going on, even if it's a national game, if what's happening in the area? Because apparently the lady passed out and they stopped the game, and apparently ESPN is getting some flack because they decided to focus on what was happening to that particular fan and everything like that. So how much should we be paying attention to these fans when they are hit? I remember there was a football player or the cheerleader that got hit accidentally by a kicked field goal. I think that was I think it was a kickoff. And that was a couple of weeks ago. So how much should we be paying attention to this, and how worried are you if you go to a sports game? Because you're over there in Spain, maybe everybody's going to hit you with a soccer ball and all along those lines, because I do know soccer is king in that part of the world. So how concerned should we be, and should the media be covering these stories?
If it bleeds, it leads. In Spain, we do have the running of the bulls. So what happens is that, Mark, if you want to come over here, I mean, when I get my place, I'll have an extra room for guests if anyone wants to come visit. And then we'll go to the running of the bulls, and I'll go watch you run with the bulls, and we'll see what happens. Now, if you don't run fast, Mark, these bulls may gore you.
Yeah, that's why I'm not trying to go with those bulls. I'm not trying to go with the bulls that can gore me. Hey, I got enough things.
I want to bring up one more thing that has been brought to my attention today. I want to share a video of, too bad David Walker isn't here, of our farm fields today in America. I want to share this.
A lot of them were on strike.
Right. Not on strike, just gone. So I don't think coffee's going to be our problem. They're still growing coffee. The tariff's going to be high, but we're not going to have food. So there you go, folks. That's just one field. That's not all the fields. So I'm going to just share this with you as an enlightenment that we need to do something, because
you guys get hungry enough, you'll go out there and you'll pick your strawberries.
Like I posted to all the Trump people who complained that migrants were taking their jobs. The jobs are open now. So
Did we just get rid of?
they hate. I have so many enemies right now. Half my
I know,
family.
I'm sure you got plenty of those. But Nick, I thought that we were getting rid of, and this is for everybody. I thought we were getting rid of the FDA, but apparently the FDA earlier today escalated a recall of market-sized broccoli florets sold at Walmart because it was found to be contaminated with listeria. But I thought that that was one of the ones that we were getting rid of, or they was planning to getting rid of. So if they get rid of that, how often will we find out about these things that are contaminated? Because I know every time I turn on the news, somebody is being recalled and everything along those lines. And apparently this was affected 12 ounces bags of the product, which are sold in 20 states. Fortunately, North Carolina is not one of them, but Alaska, Arizona, Arkansas, I hate to tell you this, Rick and Jim, California, Colorado, Idaho, Illinois, Indiana, Kentucky, Louisiana, Michigan, Montana, Nevada, Ohio, Oklahoma, Oregon, Texas, Utah, Washington, and Wyoming. And there's also a recall. I hate this because I like this snack, but apparently there's a recall on Lay's potato chips because it's got a highest risk level and consumption could cause death. So apparently there's a recall on.
Oh, have
Lay's.
you ever put a Lay's underneath a microscope and really zoomed in? And if you get close to those little bubbles, even though they've been dipped in grease, I don't know how they survived. You see these little worms crawling around. It's kind of scary.
Well, they said it contains.
I will never eat another potato chip as long as I live because I don't think it's just Lay's.
No, it's probably all of them, and they said that it contains undeclared milk, which could potentially be fatal. So I guess this is milk from someplace that was undeclared.
It's probably the worms that get in your heart. But it would freak me out to see this lid, and then you see this live little thing crawling around. Yeah, so people, the food hasn't been safe for very long. That's why I'm going to start growing mine. One, I was kind of pushed a little bit because I believe in being ahead of the game by 2 or 3 chess moves. And, I don't think that we're going to have food in our grocery stores in the very near future. If so, it's going to be ridiculously expensive. So I'm growing my own. My second greenhouse just arrived today. Yay! And it's big. And I have another one, and I'm going to join the 2. I mean, they're huge. And so I'm very excited about this because this one's going to grow all vegetables. I've got self-containing, water supply. The other problem is I keep hearing on the wire, the bird on the wire out there that we're going to be going off grid here real soon. They're going to be cutting off our utilities and our phones. I'm going off grid, actually. We are not allowed to have solar that hasn't been installed by the utility companies. That way they control everything. But if you've been stockpiling properly, you'll be okay. But I'm just giving you a heads up.
I appreciate the heads up and everything. Just really quickly along those same lines, but one of Trump's major supporters apparently is running into problems with a New York cash advance firm, and apparently he's getting in the middle of a suit that's talking about the pattern of racketeering, because we know racketeering and mob stuff is going on. But yeah, Mike Lindell, the My Pillow guy and everything, is claimed that he was defrauded by Lifetime Funding, which is an outfit that fronts money to cash poor entities in exchange for future receivables. And apparently the outspoken pillow salesman has actually made nearly $200,000 on the deal he now decries as usurious, according to a motion to dismiss the filing in Minnesota, where My Pillow is based. So it looks like he's having a battle with some people over racketeering and whether he should pay back these folks or not. But looks like one of Trump's buddies could be in having his own troubles and everything because he's trying to sue this particular organization and everything along those lines. So is the My Pillow guy going to be running into trouble? I think at one point he was selling my clocks and my everything else, and I know Trump has had his Bible and a number of other things. So we're in just age where everybody's going to sell everything.
My vodka.
Oh, Rick has a comment.
I wanted to talk about something else. 538, the polling aggregator, is out with its first average polling numbers for Trump after a week in the presidency. And these are the highest numbers ever for Trump as president and the lowest for any other president since World War II when they started polling. So he's at 50% roughly approval and 43 and change disapproval for plus 6.4%. During the first week of his first presidency, he was plus 3 point something percent.
This is the honeymoon period.
This is the honeymoon period. So he's positive. He's already lost in the first 8 days. He's gone from plus 8.2 to plus 6.4. So I expect him to decline into negative numbers in about a month or so. But right now he's on a honeymoon with half of Americans approving of what he's doing.
Well, speaking of the honeymoon, one of the things that was on the news, and we had it in the news a lot during the time of the election, but apparently, according to Trump, those New Jersey drones were authorized. So that's the latest thing that apparently Carolyn Levitt said. So the mystery drones flown across the New Jersey in the late 2024 were authorized to be flown by the FAA, and that's what they're claiming now. So at first they were worried about the drones, but now apparently the drones were actually authorized, and they're saying that after research and study, the drones that were flown over New Jersey in large numbers were authorized to be flown by the FAA for research and various other reasons. Who knows? Maybe they were trying
authorized
to
do what? Right. Authorized to do what, Mark?
Yeah,
they
that's what I
don't
would.
tell you. They research. What are they researching? What is the purpose of a drone over your neighborhood, over in your skies, over your neighborhood? It's one of those things. It depends on whether you have a nice, soft feeling about your government that it's got to be for your own good, or you have a different type of perspective and you think that, maybe my privacy is being violated. And, it's hard to say what, just because they're authorized, does that mean that it's a good thing, a bad thing, somewhere in between? Should it be challenged? Should I have the right to be free of surveillance from the air? Probably unenforceable. So, but these are the questions that we're not talking about. We're talking about whether or not they're, aliens.
Mm-hmm. That's what a lot of people were talking about, whether they were aliens and everything. I know, and this actually comes to where Sasha is at in Canada and everything, but it also comes to what topics that Kim likes to talk a lot about, which is violence against women. And I guess in this case, it was violence with women. But a woman in Markham, Ontario, was shot outside of her home in a targeted attack by a suspect that was disguised as a construction worker. So apparently the suspect was wearing a bright safety vest, a yellow construction helmet, and the blue medical mask. And they approached the woman as she arrived at her gated residence. And definitely it looks like they parked a dark Audi A4 sedan nearby and engaged the woman in conversation and luring her to the driveway where apparently they shot her and everything along those lines. So I know that's one of your topics most here in the U.S., but I guess it's also around the world, this notion of violence against women in general. So I guess I'll let you take us out with that conversation, because I know it is a topic that you are very informed about and that you are very concerned about, Kim. So I'll let you deal with that conversation.
I think that with this new administration, we're going to see a rise in violence against women with no consideration. Trump was very big about cutting the budgets for supporting law enforcement to help violence against women. Mark, I'm sure you're aware of the situation that just happened here in the RTP area. I think it was a few days ago or a few evenings ago. An officer showed up to help with a domestic violence situation and, was shot. So you take away funding from law enforcement, you take away funding to support programs like preventing domestic violence, and you fund it all into ICE, you're going to have more unnecessary deaths in this area. And whether it's a violence committed by a woman or by a man, domestic violence is, to me, on the rise, and it's going to get worse with Trump being in office.
Yeah. And the other thing I'd like to end the show with is to just reinforce what Kim was saying about our agriculture. Who do you think we're picking those fields that are empty now? I'm not going to get on my soapbox about, the Statue of Liberty saying, give us your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to be free, which I think is what America stands for. But these are the people doing jobs that you wouldn't do. Let's face it. And so we're saying, get rid of the people that are putting food on your table. Yeah. You go to the stores, they didn't get there by magic. those tomatoes, those things that you're trying to eat and enjoy, you think you're entitled to. Well, there's a lot of people working very hard for very little money to make that happen.
You know, those jobs that they were trying to take away from you.
Jim, I'd like to ask you a question. If these tomatoes were picked by illegal immigrants, what's your choice? What's the lesser evil? To refuse to eat tomatoes since they're supplied by illegal immigrants, or allow them to continue to do so you would eat tomatoes? So what's the lesser evil, do you think, for American people?
Clearly, the lesser evil is to allow them to be undocumented, have a pathway to citizenship, to do the work that we expect them to do for minimum wages, if that. And we exploit them, of course. That's part of our economic system is built on that exploitation. So, you know, we turn a blind eye to what we were doing in order to get these cheaper vegetables. But, you know, when we say let's get rid of them, they're not documented, and then we have no alternative. We don't have a plan B. Plan B is very expensive.
You mentioned, Jim, how many skyscrapers in New York City were built. I'm talking about Trump's skyscrapers in New York City were built by undocumented, illegal Polish workers.
And people that he didn't pay.
Some died there, by the way.
He didn't pay a bunch of them and everything. Just really quickly, I was actually having a conversation yesterday, and you actually brought it up, and I know we've only got a few more minutes to go, but maybe Nick's got some thoughts around this. Are we actually, I know one of the things that we are dealing with is apparently there's a push to build up instead of building across and everything like that. Because I was talking to a gentleman at the bus stop yesterday who was from Charleston, South Carolina, and he was talking about how Charleston had lost its allure because a lot of the buildings were now these tall skyscrapers, and I'm even seeing that here in Durham, and I think we're seeing it in Raleigh as well, and definitely out there in California. So are we actually losing a lot of the charm of our mini cities and all along those lines because we're building up and all in that space? Because this guy, and I remember visiting Charleston many years ago, and it did have that kind of allure, but apparently it's losing that allure because the people are building up, and they're kind of like building these large skyscrapers that kind of clutter the view and don't give you that history that was very much appreciated. So what is your thoughts on that, Nick or Kim?
Your cities suck. I mean, come on, Mark, let's get real. I mean, around here, I can go downstairs and there's shops everywhere. It's like Manhattan, and I'm in Barcelona, but almost all the Spanish and European cities are designed that way. And then we have mass transportation everywhere. I don't have a car. I got rid of all my cars. I just go, they have these things called subways, trains, trams, buses, all ways to get around without having a bloody stupid
People ride
car.
Bicycles, cabs.
Yeah, actually they do. They have bicycles, scooters, and motorcycles.
Yeah.
You know, and so the thing is, but the train system here is second, perhaps only to China, in Spain, which is amazing. What's really amazing is how a country like the United States has no fast rail system, nor any plans to design it. So what happens? You're just going to clog your arteries.
You got people that block it here in Durham, like Duke University, that block rail and a number of other things like that. I know we have I've actually got to make a little slight joke and everything because y'all were talking about tomatoes, and as a fan of music and everything, and Jim will appreciate this. I don't know whether we're going to call it tomato or tomato because that was a famous line within a song. And for some people, it's a tomato. For some people, it's a tomato, depending on how you.
Pushing up tomatoes. Have you heard
that? You're so addicted to the automobile, but unfortunately, you have to because your cities are all spread out all over creation.
Yeah. Well, you know, you're comparing Europe, which is a lot of small countries, which is to 50 states. Many of those countries could fit into a state, such as California. So, you know, there is an apples to oranges type of thing of what you're saying, Nick. But, you know, also in these cities now, you can sell space. And so if you have an 8-story building, you can sell the 10th floor and the 11th floor and the 12th floor, even though they don't exist.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, the metaverse. Well, hey, I have a metaverse garden.
Oh yeah, that'll be fun to eat someday. But why isn't there high-speed rail between San Francisco and LA?
I agree. But you can't get the municipalities in between to agree.
That's
the
right.
legal problem, is that you can say, I want to do this, but then you have to get so many sign-offs, and you can't get them to sign off.
And
Yeah,
that's what we
sure,
had
do
here
it,
in
but
Durham.
not in my backyard.
That's what we had in Durham. Was the Duke stopped a lot of that, and other people have stopped it as well, including some of the cities. But yes, sometimes the cities and all along those lines. But we'll talk about other issues around the world on World Edition on tomorrow and everything.
Great
Right
to see you
now,
all.
they have just started because it's a rerun, but it is going on right now. The show of from St. Cia Academy, the Namame Noni show, which is talking about history and education from a charter school perspective and all along those lines. And then later on, we'll have Plan to Prosper, which is a business show. But right now, we're going to get on out of here, and I'll catch Sasha and others later on. But right now, it's time to get on, and we've got other programming, including the Urban Sentinel coming at us from Baltimore at 8 o'clock, and Misfits Managed coming at 9 o'clock.